First, about the history of this car. This is my father-in-law's originally. He bought it brand new, 1974. My wife actually drove this car to high school, if you can imagine. It has about 74,000 miles on it, original miles. It sat undriven, unstarted, actually, in a garage in Atlanta for about 10 years when I pulled it out. Shipped it up here to Washington, D.C., where it's freezing cold this morning, and have been working on it for the past 8 or so years, off and on. It is a US spec, fuel-injected car. It has, actually, it's really one of the rare things, it actually has air conditioning. It's terrible, apparently. It's never worked since I've had it, but it was bad when it was working. But I'll show you that. But that actually is kind of a little interesting thing. It's fuel injected, because all the US, I believe all the US spec GTVs were all fuel injected. It still has fuel injection. That has never been gone through. It's never been fixed up. So that's probably going to have to go off to somebody to have that rebuilt, considering the age of the car, and it's also not working correctly, and there's gas and oil, and we'll go all through all of that stuff. But yeah, so that's this car. It is in pretty good shape. Paint's in good shape. It's relatively rust-free. I've fixed a lot of that already. I'll show you all of that stuff. It was running and doing well until this stuff started kind of accumulating. There's enough stuff wrong with it that it finally made sense to go through this a little bit more thoroughly. But we'll get to that in just a second.
Okay, so this is what we're talking about. This is 1974 Alfa Romeo GTV 2000. As you can see, it's in pretty good shape. Yeah. Trunk closed. It's pretty straight. Never been in any serious accidents. It's been repainted. It's got a lot of, it was used as as an actual car. So it's got a lot of door dings. It's pretty filthy right now because it's been sitting in my garage uncovered. So I gotta clean it. It's embarrassing. Interior is pretty nice. Gonna replace the stereo. As you can see down here, this is the air conditioning box you don't see, so it has kind of a modified console. But yeah, and that, it's original carpet. Just kind of put new stuff in it. Seats. It's got a hole right there. Other than that, it's very good shape. Wiring's a mess. I've also replaced reconditioned the hinges on the doors. They're not great, but they're better. Little minor pieces. Fixed the things that hold the door on. This latch is broken. Took the tank out, cleaned it, and then cut the neck so it was easier to get kind of in and out in the future. Yeah, there it is. It's got new tires on it. I'll show you the suspension in a bit as well, future. So that's what we're working on. So what's wrong? Well, a lot actually. So anyway, how we got to this point. The engine started running pretty well, and then it started running incredibly rich. And so the first step is I replaced the thermostatic actuator, I believe is what it's called, on the fuel injection pump. The old one was totally gone. This did not fix my problem. Second, checked some of the internal bits that you can actually internally service. Barometric actuator, I don't remember what this one's called, but basically the little bellows in there can fail. Those are fine. When I was in there, I did take a little sample, found out that there's gasoline mixed with the oil in the pump. The pump's never been serviced. It's original to the car. It's probably time for that thing to go. Another problem I noticed, these little plastic, the original plastic ends here, all of them were broken at the bottom and at the top. There's some zip ties holding them together. Fix that. None of that fixed the problem. Then, when trying to do some more work on the car, getting it to try to run, heat cycle it, try to do all that stuff for testing, one of the things I noticed is that cylinder 1 is just, I knew that something was wrong, but cylinder 1 is just not firing at all. Spark plug wires are relatively new. Spark plugs are fouled, but I cleaned them, still not firing. It's getting spark just fine. It's definitely getting fuel because it smells really rich. But before we do that, do the wet compression test. Take the cover off, make sure that the the chain's tight, everything's working the way, there's nothing stuck or way off on like clearances or anything. And then just, go from there. Also, quick note, a little tour around the engine bay here. You guys might have noticed this thing. It's pretty rare, I don't see these very much. This is the air conditioning compressor pump. It is an air conditioning car. It never really worked very well, according to my wife and my father-in-law, who drove this car. It is humongous and takes up a massive amount of the space that you have in the engine. This is where the battery usually goes, so I guess good news is the battery tray cancer didn't happen on this car. The battery has actually been remotely put into the trunk as a result of there being no space for it up here. But the size, the size of this bracket, the bolts that it's using, it's into the block in places where they're not supposed to be. It's got to come out. It's long since lost all of its gas, so these lines being off doesn't matter. It also has an additional radiator up front that the fittings were off when I got the car, so that might explain the leak. So yeah, just a quick side note about this behemoth that we're going to have to get out of the way, and so we can get moving with a lot of the other pieces. But first up, let's do the wet compression test. Let's check spark. Let's make sure that everything there is, I'm not missing something super obvious. Before I go through all the trouble of pulling all this stuff out, let's do some testing first. Okay, first up, spark on 1. Little tester light here. Attached it to one end to the spark plug. The lead to 1 is actually, the insulation is there's too much insulation. It doesn't fit on this, so I used an extra wire from the extra coil wire to rig that up, and we'll check to see if that has spark. Yep. Alright, so it's not spark problem. Alright, so next up, let's make sure the spark plug's okay. Okay, so like I said, it's definitely getting fuel. It is working just fine. Let's throw a new one in. Got some new ones. We can just throw a new one in just to test and see what that does. It's the brand new plug. Give that a shot. This has run rich so long that I don't know if that does anything bad to the spark plugs over time. Even if you clean them off, does it cause them to still not work? Well, let's give it a shot. All right, well, that's better. Alright, well, I would say that is not running correctly. But should fire it enough to give us the ability to determine if this thing was shooting, burning anything at all. Okay. Okay, well, I guess I gotta start figuring out what I'm actually gonna show everybody, how dumb I am in working on this project. It seems if you use my thermostat here, little digital reader, the only cylinder that seems to be actually doing anything is the one where I just replaced the spark plug. Okay, which is exactly the opposite of what was happening before. Obviously more than one cylinder was firing. It wouldn't have done anything, wouldn't have turned over at all. But clearly not all three, probably only two. So let's, I got a whole new set of spark plugs, so let's replace all of them and see what that does. As you can see, pretty foul. So not a surprise if they don't, but you know, we're just trying to get this thing so that it starts on all four, so we can get it up to temperature, so we can do some more compression stuff. I know the compression's off. We can drop some oil, get this thing up to temp, and drop some oil in each of the cylinders and check the compression. Then, and then start figuring out what we're going to do with that. I believe the test goes that if the oil test works, the oil test, if you drop oil down in there and it's wet, and the compression comes back up, that's probably most likely going to be the rings. If that isn't the case, I don't remember what the other options are. I'm almost certain it's the rings. That's so far off. But if I can avoid pulling the engine out and can fix it with some, unsticking a valve or two or something like that, obviously that's preferable. But, not against pulling out the engine if that's what needs to be done. The good thing about this car is, even though it's fuel injected and has, it's a pretty sweet little engine, the good thing about it is that it is pretty easy to work on. Simple, I guess. Shouldn't say the Alfa is easy to work on. Anybody watching this who has one knows that's not the case. All right. Let's get these guys back on. See what that is. Okay, well, it was a spark plug. Before I get too far along on this, I don't want to run it too much without the air cleaner being on, so I've taken this thing on and off so many times that getting pretty fast at it. But this is my garage. I got a bunch of other stuff, a bunch of other projects going on in here, and it is not the cleanest environment, and I definitely don't want to have to, I want to put the air cleaner on at least most of the way on. Maybe won't screw it down, but get this on, get some of the breather hoses on. Just to ensure that we don't suck anything into the engine that I don't want. But I won't worry about the straps. This thing pretty solidly on. It's like that. And okay, let's get this. Right. 163, 156, 156, 55, 177, 73, 2, 179. All right, so they're all coming up on 10. Let that go for a little while. run the compression test warm and dry, and then we'll squirt some oil in each cylinder and do it again. Alright, we are run for a little bit. We're up to temperature. And let's go ahead and pull these plugs again and start doing some compression testing. When I say this thing's running rich, that is from just getting it up to temperature. Gotta fix that. Alright. But, one thing at a time. So, there's 4. There's 2. There's 3. So 1, 3. Okay. To start rotating plugs like rotating tires or something. Okay. Let's start with the compression test. We'll start with number 4. Knocked you guys out of frame there. That is 170. Oof. Okay, that's good. 70 is what we want to see. Now, just be great if everything else is 170. Let's write that down before I forget. Oh boy. 135. That's not a good sign. Compression is that far off. It's so different between each cylinder. It's no wonder this thing runs at all. $180. Okay, so we're down on 3. And 175, 180, that's fine. On 2 and 4. Let's see how number 1's doing.
we are at, okay, 190. So kind of all over the place. So you basically want to be within 10%. Let's do 3 again, just to make sure that we have something going. I did this right. Make sure it's nice and tight. Layers on tight. I don't know if you guys can see that. Okay, it came up a little bit. That's like 145, but 145 is still not what we're looking for. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to squirt a bit of oil down in 3. Let that sit for a bit, and then we'll check it again with wet compression. Actually, I might just do all 4 of them using the same. Let all those sit, and then run it again kind of with the wet test, see if that makes a big difference. Alright, that oil has had a chance to sit. Let's start off with number 3, because that was the one that was way down from the other ones. So, as far as I understand, wet compression test tells you, versus the dry one, you put some oil down in there, and if it brings the compression up within, brings it up back to normal or just up in general, that means that you have a ring problem. If it stays the same, then you have a cylinder head, gasket, valve or valve seat problem. None of those are good. Just, is this something I need to get head fixed or work on the head, or do I need to take the engine out and work on the rings? So, choose your adventure. All right, let's give this a shot. And 150. And it was at 145, so it came up a little bit. Let's see what the other ones do. Four. Guy is at 180. It was at 170 before. So I imagine that you can have kind of both problems, right? I mean, for an engine that sits a while, you can have, rings starting to go, but there's some compression getting past them, but not a ton, and you have a valve problem, right? I mean,
So that would be, you know, the compression can come up a little bit on the wet test, but not, you know, a huge amount. So that means valves are good, rings going. To 180, that stayed the same. Let's go to 1. So I realized my mistake when running into this stuff. I was running the dry compression test and the wet compression test when I did this before. I didn't know what I was doing. And you're supposed to run with the throttle all the way open to give you an accurate measure. That's why I thought everything was off. I thought 4 was high, these were low. Turns out that 3 pays to do things the correct way. 3 is low. The others seem to be fine so far, but let's check 1 with wet. And it was, this one was at 190. Yeah, 195. Okay, well, still not great that these things are off from each other a considerable amount. So, you can read my writing here. Cylinder 1, 190, 195. Cylinder 2, 180, 180. Cylinder 3, this is dry wet, 145, 150. Cylinder 4, 170, 180. Alright, well, we'll just have to figure out what that means. Next up, pulling off the valve cover.